Welcome to an RPG in a Box video. In this video, we're going to take a look at how to create a custom quest log or custom quest journal. Now, up front, this video is going to be very scripting heavy. So if you're new to RPG in a Box, then this isn't necessarily the recommended video to start with. If you're just looking to know about quests, then refer to either my basics starter guide to quests or my basics on the quest system to just get an understanding of how quests work in RPG in a Box. This is going to be a look at making a custom quest system. So once you want to go beyond what RPG in a Box offers, we're going to go a bit beyond that in this video. So this video is going to take 3 stages. First of all, I'm going to show you some things that I've set up ahead of time, because if I was to set up everything in this video, it would just take too long. So I've already done the widgets. I've already done some of the background stuff on the map. So I'm just going to show you, the first part of this video is just to show you what I've set up. And then the next part of the video is we'll then go into scripting, where we'll start to script a custom quest system. And then the final part of the video is we're then going to set up a custom quest codex. And I'll explain why we're going to do that, the benefits of doing that. We're also going to take a look at something which I've not done before in any of my videos, which is not only how to use custom data, but how to then read and write to custom data, because we're going to make changes to the data as well. So that will come in the later part of the video. That's going to be the last thing we do. So stay tuned for that. So let's take a start, because we've got a long video ahead of us. So I will, of course, chapter the video. So, if you don't want to watch the whole thing, there's just parts of it you're interested in, then feel free to look in the description for the chapter links. In the description of the video, I will also put the project file that we're going to use today. So if you want to just mess around with the end result files and, break them apart and make changes to them and play around, you can feel free to do so as well. Okay. So with that said, let's get started with the video. So first of all, let's quickly talk about the things that I've set up ahead of time. So I have a signpost here, which in the map, when you interact with it, it's just got a custom quick script on it, where all it does is each time you use it, so there's a property on the sign which starts at 0, and then each time you use it, it increments it until a maximum of, in essence, 4, because it goes from 0 to 3. And each time you use it, it gives a different quest. Okay, so this is just a quick way of giving us multiple quests that we can test the quest log with. Okay, I've also set up a building for one of the quests. It's really just there for looks, but there's also a part of it which this is more going to be used in the later part of the video. When we get into the more advanced quest stuff, we're going to actually use a practical example. Okay. In the quests tab, I've made 4 quests. So just quick example quests. So it's got a name and a description. So I've just come up with some 4 quests that we can use with the quest system, okay, and put into our log. Okay. As well as that, we've got some widgets. So this is going to be the main quest log. Now, obviously, it goes without saying that when it comes to the UI design, you can obviously design this however you want it to look. This is just a very simple example, just to give you a sort of an idea of where to get started. Okay, so all it is it's a list of, in this case, just 4, just so I'm not here all day, but it's a list of 4. You can have 4 quests going at a time, and as you gain quests, this list will dynamically populate. So, these aren't actually all visible at the start. Each time you get a quest, if you've got one going already, it will then add a different button. And then the title of the quest will appear here and the description will appear there. We've also got a button that will allow you to abandon the quest. If you just, can't be bothered to do that quest anymore, you can basically abandon it and fail it and all of that. So that's the journal. And as I say, you can design it however you want in your own. Once you know how to do it, you can then, as I say, make your own. You can have a frameless one. So for example, we could turn the frame off, and then you could have that in front of an image. So you could make your quest log look like a book. So, you have this stuff on one page of the book, and then the list is on the other side of the book, on the other page. You know, you can make it look however you want it to look. This could look like a scroll. You know, there's all sorts of different things you can do with UI. We're just going to keep it very simple for this tutorial though, where it's a widget, you know, that just has some options on it. So that's that. Then we've got a variation of this, which is just a copy, which I've called empty. And this is for when you don't have any quests. So when you have quests, it looks like this. And when you don't have quests, it looks like that. It says no active quests. Okay. Then we have, this is the icon that's going to appear on the screen all the time. So this is going to replace the one that you have in the management screen. So we'll talk a little bit about that. What we haven't done, and I'm going to do it for the video, is we're going to change the theme for this widget. And I'll explain why in a moment. And then the last thing we have is the quest HUD, but that's not going to come in till the very end of the video when we start making our own custom quest system. Okay, so those are the three widgets which we're going to predominantly be using for the first part of this video. And then other than that, I think that's all I've set up ahead of time. So with that said, let's first of all go into game so I can tell you how the quest system works behind the scenes so that you can get a better understanding before we start what we're working with. Okay, so let's just quickly go into game. So here we are in the game. So you're already familiar with, in RPG in a Box, there's the quest editor where you can make your quests, where you can give it a title, you can give it a description, you can set tags, and you can set whether there's a complete and failure script, right? That's the quest editor, okay? But what you also have besides that is in-game, you have a few things available to you. The player has a property on them by default, always, called quests. Now, what is quests? Well, let's print it. It's an array, okay? Now, every new game, the property starts as an empty array, okay? Because you shouldn't have any quests unless you've scripted your startup script to give you a quest straight away. Unless you do that, then this will be an empty array, okay? Now, if I go and use this sign, which is scripted to give me a quest, okay? Now, if I reprint the array, we have a quest ID in there, okay? And if I use the sign again and print it again, now we've got two quest IDs in there, etc., etc., etc. So basically, all the quests that you're given will go into that array. Now, as soon as you complete a quest, so let's complete quest 001. It will remove it from the array. Now we've only got one quest in there, okay? And likewise, if you fail quest, it will also remove, oh, I failed the wrong quest. We need to fail quest 2. Okay, now let's print. Okay, then it'll be an empty array. Okay, because basically that's what it does. So you need to understand first of all that what give quest does is all it does is it just puts the quest ID that you type into here. So in this case, quest 001. It just puts it into that player quests property. That's all this does. Give quest, all it will do is put this ID, quest 001, into this array. That's all it does. And all that complete and fail does is remove that relevant ID from the player quests array. Okay, that's all it's doing behind the scenes. So understand that first of all. But give quest, all it does is just take the ID that you give it and put it inside that player quests property. Okay, and likewise, when you complete or fail a quest using the fail or complete functions, all they do is they remove that ID from the player quests array, okay? The only difference between complete and fail is when you put a script on the complete or fail event for that quest, okay? That's the only time anything different, anything extra beyond that will happen, okay? The other thing you need to be aware of is the quest codex. Okay, now what's the quest codex? The quest codex is when you make something in the quest editor, it gets saved into the quest codex. Okay, so if we print a specific quest ID, so let's print quest 001, we can see that what we get back is a codex, and it's all the things that we filled in the quest editor for this quest. So there's the ID of it, there's the name of it, the new home, there's the description, you've been given a new home, you need to find a way in, there's the tags for it. If we had an image set for it, that would be the image. If you had any scripts set for them, I don't, but if you had complete and failure scripts, they would also be set, they would also show here, okay? If we printed quest 2, here would be quest 2, the name, free the town, description, dark shadow, over, free the town, that sort of thing. So all of this codex data here, this is the stuff that we filled in the quest editor, okay? So the combination of both the quest codex and the player.quest property, we're going to use to make our quest journal, okay? Because we can use, this will allow us to check what quests we have, because we'll have the quest ID inside this array. And in this, we can pass in the pass in the ID that we get from the array into here, and we can get the information. We can get the name of it, we can get the description of it, and all of that. So the combination of both the quest codex and the player's quests property, we can use to script and make our own custom journal. Now, what I'm going to show you at the very end of the video is how we can ignore the inbuilt quest codex and make our own, where we can go beyond what the inbuilt quest system allows us to do, okay? And I'll explain why we're going to do that as well, because there's some functionality that I wanted to show that isn't in the inbuilt one, okay? So I just wanted to point those out first, that we have the player.quests array and we have the quest codex, okay? We're going to be using both of those in this video. So I think we're ready to start scripting our quest log. So the first thing we want to do is we want to show our main widget. So at the start of the game, I want to show widget and its quests. And I think it's capital Q. Okay, so if we apply and save that, just go into game. So here we are in game, and this is my widget with the quest icon. Okay, now at the moment it's erroring because it's looking for a script which we don't have yet. We haven't made it. Okay, yours, if you were following this and you've made a widget and you were going to now click it, it wouldn't do anything because it wouldn't even error. The reason mine's erroring is because I've copied these across from a test project. I've pre-done all this first, so I'm just rebuilding it for the tutorial. So until I make these scripts again, it's going to error that it can't find scripts, okay? So ignore those. In your case, it just wouldn't do anything when you click it because you haven't made anything for it yet. But the point is we have our button, okay? Now, what I want to get rid of is the blue border around it because I want it to just be I just want it to be a transparent scroll on the top of the screen. So for that, we're going to make a custom theme, okay? So we're going to go to the UI editor, we're going to go to themes, and we've only got one at the moment and we can't edit this one. So we're going to click the duplicate button and we'll call this frameless, okay? And all I'm going to edit in the frameless settings is the buttons. So I'm just going to click each button color and I'm just going to slide the alpha channel down to 0. And you see the button over here. As I keep sliding these down, see what effect it has. See how it starts to basically hide everything. And I'm going to do all of the options as well because I don't want it to show at all, even if you hover over the button, whether you click the button. So once you've made all of these transparent, click the save button, which is actually in this section of the interface, just underneath the drop down. Click that. Now, we can't just assign it in the widget editor, we have to do it in script. So this is going to be something we add to our startup script. So just before we show this widget, we're going to say widget quests dot theme equals frameless. Click apply and save. Let's go into game one more time, just test. And there we go. There's our transparent button, okay, with the image on it. Okay, so there's our nice scroll icon set up. Okay. Now, what we should also do, I've already done it, but what you'll need to do is go to game configuration, go to, oh no, it's not game configuration. Go to the UI editor, go to screens, and make sure your quest log toolbar button is off. Okay, so because we don't want to confuse the players with this one. Okay, so make sure that's not available. Okay, you might even not be using the management screen, but if you are, just make sure there's no way to get to the inbuilt quest log, because we're not using that, we're making our own. Okay, so now obviously at the moment this button doesn't do anything, so we need to obviously make it do some things. Now what I'm actually going to add just before we do any of this stuff is I want to prepare my main quest lists widget. Okay, so this is just going to be a lot of blanking out things, so you'll see what I mean. So I'll explain what this is in a minute, but this needs to be visible false. So let me explain what this is for a moment. So in our main widget, this one, we have these text labels here, which are, the ID is QID3, QID4, QID1, QID2, etc. And what they're going to do is they're going to contain, eventually, they're going to contain the relevant quest ID for what's going to be the quest in these buttons here. Now, I don't want these to be visible at all. Okay, so I want to hide these. So that's what we're doing in our startup script. We're telling these relevant text labels to be invisible at the start of the game. And never at any point are they made visible. They're purely just for behind the scenes, just so we have a way of referencing a quest's ID if we need it. Okay, oops. So we're going to hide each one of them. What I also want to do is hide the main buttons. So we'll do that as well. So quest 2, quest 3, quest 4, visible, false. And then the last thing we need to do is hide the tick boxes that are on the right hand side of them as well. So those are called selection 1. Copy that, paste 4 times. Okay, so that just allows us to make it so that if we were to show, if for some reason that widget was able to be shown, it's not, because we're going to do things a bit differently. But if it somehow did manage to show this widget before we got any quests or anything, it just means there's nothing here. We've hidden those, we've hidden those, we've hidden those. Okay, and this would just be blank title and description. Okay, so it just means we're starting the game at a blank state where we're ready to go. Okay. So now we need this button. When we click it, this one here, we need it to do something. Okay, even though it says none, it's actually set to a script called build quest list. So let's make that script now. So we're going to go to new, build quest list. Obviously you can call yours whatever you want, but obviously I have to stick to the name so it doesn't error. So I'm going to call this build _ quest _ list. And the reason I'm calling that is because essentially this script will actually build. It's not just going to show the widget, it is actually going to do some dynamic building. So when we click this button, what we want it to do first of all is store inside a local variable, which we'll call quest list. We want to store that player's property, quests. So $quest list will now contain the array of quests we have. Now it might be empty or it might be full. So that's what we're going to check. If $quest list is equal to array, this is how you check for if something is empty. you don't say null or anything like that. You say, is it equal to array open and close brackets with nothing in it? Okay, this will be a check for, is it an empty array? Okay, now remember, at the start of the game, it is that. It does start as an empty array. So if we've just started the game and we're clicking that scroll, in this case, what we want to do is show widget quest journal empty. So that's the one that says no active quests on it. We want that to show. However, if it's not an empty array, i.e. there's at least a quest in there, but there's probably going to be more, we want to run a custom function, because originally I had it all scripted in here, but I realized I use it multiple times. So we're going to make this function in a minute. This does not exist. We're going to have to make it. It's a function called refresh quest log. This is going to do all of the building. So we can then write this once as a function, and then whenever we want to build our list for whatever reason, we can just call this function, okay? But the other thing we then need to do is show the right widget. So once we've built the list, we then want to show quest journal, and that will show the main quest journal, okay? That's it. That is how complicated our build quest list script is. But the reason it's not that complicated is because most of the code, complicated code, is actually in that refresh quest log. Now ignore the error. It's because it doesn't know what the function is because we haven't made it. So I'll comment that out for the moment so we can save the script. Now we need to go to our game configuration panel, go to global functions, and we now need to make function refresh quest log begin and then end. So get ready to write a big function. So first of all, we need to wipe the slate clean, okay? Now, although we did this on startup, this function needs to be able to work anywhere at any point in our game. So we can't assume that it's still at the state it was at startup. So we need to do it again. So we need to basically go through and make sure that quest 1, which is the main buttons, the text has gone back to being nothing if it was the title of a quest. We also need, I'm just going to copy that to make life easier. We need to do that 4 times so that all of our buttons get put back to default. But as well as that, in between each one, we want to change its visibility back to false. And that goes in between. And make sure that this is quest 2, quest 3, quest 4. Okay, so that just makes sure that the main quest buttons are both back to being blank text, but also not visible. We then need to hide the selection buttons. So that's the tick boxes. So that's Q cell 1, visible false, copy that 4 times. So as you can see, there's a lot of just hiding and resetting things at the beginning of this function, which is why I made it a function, because I didn't want to keep doing this every single time it's done in the process. So that's now hiding the tick boxes. And then we want to reset, lastly, the QIDs, which are those hidden labels that store the ID. We want to just make sure that they're no longer filled in. Okay, and do that 4 times. Okay, so that's the main reset process, and we want to do that at the start just to make sure that we control what's going to be shown and what's going to be hidden. So by just resetting everything before we then set only the things that are relevant. It just ensures that we only see things that we've changed. This will make a bit more sense when it's working, okay? So the next thing we need is to create a local variable, which is basically going to act as an iterator. So as we loop through, this number is going to increase, okay? We're going to use this number for part of the process, okay? So we're just making a local variable. I've called it iter because it's an iterator. Starts at 0, okay? And now we're going to make a for loop. So we're going to for loop through the player.quests array, the property that they have on them. Okay, now this should have quests in them. Remember, this is only being called if the player.quests array is not empty. So this function can only ever work when there's quests in there. So now we're going to go through it and grab all the quests. So the first thing we need to do is each time it goes through with a new quest, we want to increment the iterator. So now that's going to be 1 if there's a quest in there. And if there's multiple quests, it will be 2 the second time, 3 the third time, etc., etc., etc. We now want to update the main quest button, but we want to use the iterator, so we're using placeholder expression. So we're not typing a specific number, so we're not doing quest 1, quest 4. We're using what's the one we're on. So this is quest 1, this will be the top button, quest 1. Okay, and we're going to set the text to equal quest, and then we're going to use $Q because it's going to be the ID, because that's what's in the player quests array, right? We know, I showed you in game that when you print player.quests, it's an array of just the IDs. So that means as we loop through, that's what's going to be in $Q. It's going to be a quest ID because that's all that's in here. So we can use the quest ID, pass it into the quest codex, and it will give us the information back. But we don't want all of the information. We want the name. So specifically, just give us the name bit of that codex. That goes into the text of the button. So that now means the button will show the title of our quest. We want to then make this button visible, because there's no point filling it in if you can't see it. We then want to put into the QID, again, we can't use a number, we have to use the iterator, so it's the relevant one. We're just going to pass in Q, because it's the ID, right? So we're literally just putting the ID into that hidden text label, just so we have a reference to it if we need it, okay? We can tie the ID to the button that's beside it, basically. And then the last thing I think for this is we just need to show the tick box, the relevant tick box. Equals true. And click validate. And that's it. That's our refresh quest log. So it basically starts by just making sure everything's blank, everything's invisible, and then we just for loop through the player quests array and only show the ones that are valid for the amount that we have. So it hides them all, and then if we had 2 quests, it shows the top 2. And then we run it again, it hides them all, and now if there's 3 quests, it shows 3 of them. So it just means that by hiding them all, it means you can never get into an incident where, or an instance where you've only got 1 quest, but it's still showing 3 buttons because earlier you had 3 buttons. So by hiding them all first, it just means we always start with a blank slate first, and then you only show the ones for the amount that you have in the player quests array, okay? So now we go back to our build quest list script. We can uncomment this now. Now that function exists, it won't error. Okay, so basically this script is basically saying start by storing into the player start by storing the player quests property into the quest list. So that's going to be a copy of all the quest IDs. If it's an empty array, then show the widget empty. Otherwise, refresh the quest log, i.e. build all the lists in that widget, and then show the widget. Okay, so let's go into game. This should already be working to a degree now. So if we click this button, it should start by showing no active quests, because that quest array on the player quests property is an empty array. So we have no active quests. Let's go click on this sign and move away. Open this. We should have one quest in there. Okay. And if we click it, it's not going to do anything. It might even error. No, but it doesn't do anything. Okay. So we've yet to script the button itself, but you can see that we've got the title. Hidden over here, you can't see it because it's hidden, is that label that's now got the ID of this, i.e. quest 0001. And then this will become active in a moment when we click the button. Okay. So we've still got to do the abandoned quest. We've still got to do the individual buttons themselves. Okay. If we click the sign again, come back. We click the sign again and again and again. If we open the journal now we've got all 4 quests. Okay. So each time you click this button, it checks how many quests we've got and then populates this widget based on that amount. Okay. And that's dynamic as well, because remember how when you complete a quest, it removes the ID from the player quests property. So this should already work, because if we complete quest 1, for example, that ID now no longer exists in the player quests property, right? Let's print player.quests. Notice how quest _0001 is not there anymore, right? And that should reflect automatically in our journal, because the refresh quest log function is always checking that player quests array. And sure enough, there's 3 in there now, right? If we completed another one, let's complete quest 2, let's complete quest 3. Now there's only 1. Okay, and now let's complete them all. Let's complete the last one. Complete quest 4. It should now go back to being no active quests. So you should already be in a state where most of this is working in terms of managing how many quests you've got, showing them, and then when you complete a quest, it's gone, and when you don't have any quests, you get this widget. So already this should automatically be working for you. Okay. Now we just need to make it so that when you click a button, you get the relevant text. So for that, we need to script a script, make a script that's going to go on these buttons. Okay. Now I'm going to make one script that does them all, rather than making one script per button, because that's just a waste of. You don't need to do it that way. So let's go to the script editor, make a new script, and this is going to be called quest click. I'm going to call it that because that's what I called it before. So just to make sure it fits with what I had before, but obviously you can call it whatever you want. Okay. The first thing we want to do, and I see I've left myself some notes here, so I'll rewrite them out as well. We want to empty all tick boxes. Okay. Now we could also do this at startup, but I don't think we need to. But basically what we're going to do is we're going to set qcell1, that's a lowercase, .image to equal box.png, which is what it is anyway, but just to ensure that every time you click a button, it does this first. This is again a bit like with the refresh quest log. We want to ensure that we're resetting everything before we then do the action that the button should actually do, just to ensure that we don't get any sort of remnants of the previous selection left behind. So I'm ensuring that everything gets reset before we then set the one we want. So we're going to set empty all the tick boxes by setting them to the empty image. And then we want to show the relevant tick box. So for this, we need a local variable, which we're going to call button ID, and this is going to equal self.id. Okay, so this is basically going to be the button we click on, which in this case, let's say it was quest 1. That's what it's going to be. That quest 1 is going to be what's inside $button ID, if that's the button we click on. If we clicked on the one below it, it would be quest 2. That's what would be inside button ID. Okay. What we then need to do is a bit of string manipulation. Okay, so what we're going to do is button ID is now going to equal substring, and I'll explain this in a moment, but substring $button ID 5 1. Now, because I'm making a very limited quest journal for this example, a very simple one where it's only got the ability to have 4 quests concurrently, this is quite simple to do, but it is possible that if you've got like hundreds of quests, that obviously your quest IDs will go further than 1 or 2, or further than 1 digit, sorry, I meant to say. So you might have 99 quests, or you might have 100 quests, or you might have 300 quests. So this 1 may not be enough, would certainly not be enough for, really big, intricate games where you've got a lot of quests. So you'd have to sort of rethink this a little bit. But just for the purposes of this tutorial, it's very simple. So we're using 1. In order to do it, if you wanted to have 3-digit numbers and 2-digit numbers, you would just check. You would check how long the button ID is. Okay, so if it's longer than we know, let me explain what this is doing first, and then it will make more sense how you would then work with other numbers. So what this is going to do, what substring does, is it chops up a string. So the first thing it asks you for is what string do you want to chop up? Well, in this case, button ID. So in this case, I want to chop up that. Okay. What does the 5 do? How many things do you want to chop off? Well, quest is a 5-letter word, so I want to chop off quest. What that leaves us with then is the 1. Okay. What the 1 is here, this is how many characters in this direction do we go? Well, only 1, because that's all there is. But obviously, if it was a 2-digit number, let's say it was quest 12, then this would need to be 2. Otherwise, if you just left it at 1, all you'd have is the 1. But if it's a 2-digit number, you need the 12, not the 1, right? Does that make sense? So that's why I mean what you're going to need to do if this is, quest 100 or quest 344, if you've got that many quests, then this is going to need to be 5 to get rid of the word quest, leaving you with that. But then to ensure you get the 3-digit number, this is going to need to then be 3 to get all the 3 digits. So in order to do that, what you're going to need to do is count before you do the chopping up. Count how long the self ID is. So we've just stored it. So then you would say if len of button ID is equal to 6, that would be quest 1, quest 2, quest 3, quest 4. If it's 7, that would be quest 10, quest 11, quest 12, etc. Because you're taking into account the 5 letters, and then it's got 2 digits at the end. So that would be 7 characters in total. 8 would then be a 3-digit number. So you'd have, if len button ID is 6, then this would be 5 and then 1. If it's 7, else if it's 7, then it's button ID equals substring 5, 2, etc., etc. Okay, we don't need to do that because mine is only a simple 4-quest journal. Okay, but that's what we're doing here. What we're doing with button ID is we're getting the button's text first, the ID of it, but we're chopping off the quest bit and just getting the number. Okay, because we're going to use that number now with our widget. So qcell, and then passing in that button ID that we've just isolated, i.e. the number. So this will become qcell1 basically. We're going to change the image of that to tick. So you've ticked it because you've clicked that button. So that relevant image, that relevant image element should have its image changed. Okay, but that's not all we want to do. because where are we? We then want to, we're going to make a global property, okay? Because by default, RPG in a Box doesn't do this, and I thought it would be a useful thing to have, specifically later on in the video when we do our custom quest system, but we'll do it here for the moment, where we're going to make a custom global property, which we're going to call active quest, and it's going to start as an empty string, okay? But what we're going to do now is set global.property active quest to equal, and it equals QID, pass in the button ID, the one we've just chopped up, so we can get the right one, dot text. So that ID that's hidden in the widget is now going to get put into the global property active quest. So this will basically contain a quest ID, okay? And it will be the one that we've clicked as active. So now we have a means of being able to check which quest are you actually doing. So we can check that global property to see, you know, have you actually engaged with a specific quest that's in your quests array? Because it's one thing to have, you know, 5 quests on the go, but which one are you actually doing? So this is an ability to say when you click one, that this becomes your active quest. Okay, so you can check what's in that global property to see which quest you're doing. That's not really going to come into play right now, but it will later when we do the custom system. Okay, so that's the tick box stuff, but now we need to actually populate the actual quest journal, quest log itself. So for this, what we need to do is we need to for loop through the player quests array again. And we need to store into a couple of local variables the current quest name, and that's going to equal quest, the main quest codex, $Q, which is the QID we're currently on, the quest ID we're currently on, store the name data into this local variable. We're also going to write another local variable called description. That's going to equal quest. Again, pass in the quest ID that we're on as we loop through, and we want the description property that's in that codex. So we create a couple of local variables that we can use, and then if self.text, i.e. if the text on the button we've clicked on is equal to current quest name, then it means it's the quest for the button that we've clicked on. Okay, then we want widget quest journal element quest log title, I think is what I called that element, dot text equals $current text quest name, and then we want quest log description or desk dot text to equal $current quest description. Okay, so that will populate those elements. And then the last thing we want to do, no, that's it. That's it. And what we can also do just at the end is print widget quest journal QID and then I think it's button ID, yep, dot text, just to confirm that it has also given us the right ID for the button we've clicked on. Don't need to do that. I just had it in there just as a way of just checking that each time we click one of these buttons, it prints the relevant ID as well, just to check it is in sync. Okay, so now we can click on this and set that script quest click on each of these buttons. We will quickly go over the script one more time just to explain what it's doing, but now these are set, so we'll click save. So this script basically, first of all, it just makes sure that all these tick boxes are set to this image, the one they're currently at anyway, but we have to make sure that no matter what state in the game we are, we put these back. So we set them back to this image here where they're empty. Then what we do is we find the button we've clicked on. So if we clicked on this one, we want to find this relevant tick box. So we get the ID of this, and then we chop off the text bit. So we chop off this bit, leaving the 1, and then we pass that 1 onto the end of the check for the Q cell ID. So it gives us the right button. We change the image of that to tick, so it looks like it's ticked. And then once we've done that, we then populate these by looping through the player quests array, checking if the title, as we loop through what's in the quests array, matches the title of the button we've clicked on. Then it puts the relevant name and description for that quest into these two boxes. Okay, let's go into game and have a look. So let's use the sign 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's open up our quest log. So let's click the new home. There we go. We get our tick. We get the new home, get our description. We can click this one. It ticks that one instead, changes the title, changes the description, changes the title, changes the description, moves the tick box up and down. Okay. So it's all working perfectly. And if we show that one more time, we can see that we've activated quest 4, right? This is ticked. This is the title. This is what it's showing in our quest log. So if we bring down the console and we print global.property active quest, it should show the right ID for that, which is quest_0004. Yeah. So now we can also check what's the quest that we've currently got active. Which one are we ticking? Which one is in our journal? Which is the one we're actively saying, let's do this one. Okay. If I tick this one instead, then we're not doing quest 4 anymore. We're doing quest 2. Okay. So, oh, and by the way, this quest 2 here was the fact that when each time we click a button, oops, I closed it. Each time you click a button, it's also printing the ID of that button we clicked. Okay. So, that's that. So the only script left to finish off the simple, I call it simple, but the system that we've been setting up so far with these widgets, the only thing left to do is the abandon quest button. So let's move on to that now. So we're going to go to the script editor, start a new script, which we're going to call abandon_quest. And we're going to edit it and get rid of the display message. So for this, what we need to do is start by storing a local variable. We need to store into that the title that's in our widget. So what's the title of the current quest, the name of it that's in our active journal? That's going to go into selected quest. We need an iterator that's going to be at 0. And now we need to for loop through, again, the player dot quests array. Do some things. So first of all, we need to increment the iterator each time it finds a new entry. We need to store the current quest name into that variable. That's going to be quest, and then the current ID that we're looping through, .name. And that's all we need. We're now going to check if that quest name is equal to In other words, have we found in the player quests loop the same name as the one that we've stored earlier from the widget? Is it the active quest? That needs to be end that loop. If it is, we want to fail quest and pass in the ID. So it fails that relevant quest. We then need to check if global property active quest is equal to $Q. In other words, have we just cancelled what is in essence the active quest? Then global.property active quest should be blanked out, so it's no longer active. It doesn't have that ID in it anymore. That's that for now. There will be other stuff to go in there, but that's for later. So what else do we need? And then we need to do a load of widget stuff. So just having a look. Yeah, so we do need to do quite a bit of widget stuff. So in quest, and then iterator dot text should be blank. Let's copy that. And then the visibility should be made false. We need to set the tick box for the relevant iterator to false. The image back to box. We need to set the QID field to blank. And I'm also setting the visibility of this to false. Missed that. Again, just making sure that everything gets reset each time you update the list, just to make sure that the list is accurate every single time. And then the last thing we do is we clear out the journal bit. So quest log title dot text is equal to nothing, and quest log description dot text is equal to nothing. Okay, that's the end of that for loop. Or no, that's the end of the if, sorry. That's the end of this if here, if it's the current rest. Then we need if player dot quests is equal to an empty array. So in other words, was that the last quest that you just abandoned? If it was, then we want to hide widget quest journal and instead show widget quest journal empty. So it goes back to saying no active quests. However, if it isn't an empty array, if there are still quests in there, then we want to recall our function. So it rebuilds the quest list based on what's in our I'll fix that in a minute. Based on what's in our player.quests property. So I've misspelt property there. Okay, so with that saved now, that script, abandon quest, can go into our widget under the abandon quest button. Okay, so that will basically, what this will do is this will look for what's the title, what's currently showing here, find that title based on what's in our player quests array, find the ID that has that title in the quest codex, and then basically fail that quest, remove the text from here, and then just clear everything out that's in this list, and then rebuild it again from scratch, just to make sure that it's all cleared out and it's always reflective of what's then in our player quests array. Okay, so let's just go into game. So here we are in game. So we'll click the sign 4 times, or let's just do 3 times, let's say. Click this. So we've got our ability to select multiple quests as we go up and down the list. Okay, but let's say we want to fail. Let's say we can't be bothered to do Free the Town. Okay, so we'll click Abandon Quest. That clears out the title and description. It also, behind the scenes, clears out that global property, so we don't have an active quest at the moment. We've got 2 quests left. You see how it's updated the list, so there's no gap. It just rebuilds the list. That's why we've done it that way, to make sure there's no gaps or duplicate buttons or anything at any point. By ensuring that each time we click Abandon Quest, we just wipe the slate clean first and then build based on what's in the array in order. It just means it rebuilds the list each time. Let's get rid of a new home, so the goblin threat will go up. See how it's now at the top. And then as soon as there's no quest in this list, the last one, abandon it, we get this widget instead. No active quests. Okay? So that brings us to, I'm probably going to wrap this video up here because it's been a bit of a long one, been quite an in-depth one, so I'm going to give you guys a break. So there'll be a part 2 to this video. This has been part 1, where we're just taking the inbuilt quest codex and we've used that to make a widget that allows us to separate out the various bits of data, like the title and the description, and put them into various different parts of a widget. But we've also made it so that dynamically the amount of quests you have show up on the left-hand side. So you could activate different quests and show that relevant quests data on the right. So, and as you abandon quests or complete quests, that list is dynamic, it changes, it updates. So in the next video, we're actually going to make quests a bit more involved. We're going to make it so quests actually have objectives. So rather than just stages, we're actually going to give quests objectives. So the game will tell you what you have to do next. And for that, we're going to make a custom quest codex. We're going to use data, saving and loading data. So see you in the next video where we cover part 2 of this, which is where we're going to take this system as we have it now and just embellish it just a little bit more, just to add a bit more functionality beyond what is built in to the existing quest system. This will just give you an idea of how to expand, one example of how to expand an existing system beyond what it already has, in this case, the quests system. Okay, so that said, that'll wrap this video up. Thanks for watching. Do check the description for time code stamps and the project download itself. Bearing in mind, the project download, although it will be in the description, it will also include the stuff we're going to cover in the next video. So you might want to hold off on downloading it until you've seen the next video, just because there'll be stuff in there which is like, oh, this wasn't covered. You know, what's all this stuff? That's going to be in the next video. So just be aware of that. But I will put the project in the description if you want to download it anyway. So with that said, that'll wrap up this video. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, as always, feel free to ask on the Discord.